Pivot tables and charts are enormously powerful ways to query and analyze your data, and not many people use them. I think people are quite frightened of them, and I've never really understood why. One of the important things to note is when you're pivoting your data, you're not touching your raw data. You can't hurt it. So if you make a mistake, it doesn't matter because your raw data is still there and it's still safe. I think people are intimidated by pivot tables, which is why I've put together this short video introduction for you. One of the things I'm not going to be able to train you on is how to pivot and how to analyze your data, because you really need to have a deep understanding of your data in order to be able to do that. But what I can do is show you the basic tools and get you started on the road to pivoting heaven. All right, so what I've got here is I have got some data I've pulled out of the course booking system. So this just shows everybody who attended every session that we ran last year. As you can see here, I've got about 10,000 rows worth of data. So what I'm going to do is I am going to pivot it. I actually have the inserting a pivot table on my quick access toolbar because I pivot a lot, but you'll find it on the insert tab, and it's way over on the left hand side. The way these tabs are organized is the most popular things or the most useful things tend to be on the left hand side. So there's a hint about how useful pivot tables are. Anyway, all I need to do is I click it, and it has automatically picked up the range of my data. That's because I have no blank rows and no blank columns in my data. It's really important when you structure your data that you don't have any blanks in it. Please, with a data dump, don't try and make it look pretty, don't try and format it. This is just a repository of all of your data. Okay. And one of the things you'll find when you use pivot tables actually is that it's a positive feedback loop with the way you structure your data. So the more you pivot, the more you understand how to structure your data, and the better structured your data, the better pivot tables you get, which leads you to back to better structure of your data, which leads you to better pivot. Rah, rah, rah. Okay. So I'm just going to say OK to that. And what it's done is it has opened me up another sheet. So I've got this sheet here, and here I've got my pivot table and I've got nothing in it. What I've got here though is a list of all of my columns, or otherwise known as fields. So if we look at these, we've got status, enrollment type, created at, and so on. If I go back to my original data sheet, you'll see that those fields are all the same as my column headings here. Okay. So let's see, what might I want to know? Well, I might want to know by, let's say, how many courses were run. So I'm going to make my course into my values. So I can see there were 9,758 courses run, or sorry, 9,758 people attended courses. I could go in and say I want to do that by the group name. So there you go, I can now see that which of the training teams trained how many different people. I might want to look at that in terms of the date. So I can come in here and it's going to put that underneath my group name. Just see how it changes. Here I've got my rows. If I change the order of the start date and the group name, can you see how it just changes the way that data appears? But what I want to do actually is make my start date a column. Okay, so that's now showing me individual courses that ran on individual dates. But let's say I want to make that monthly. I can just click on one of these. If I go to my data tab, from here I can say I want to group that data. It understands that that's a date, so it's saying what do you want to group this by? Is it months, quarters, years, days? Months seems quite appropriate to me. So there you go. I've just in a few seconds built up a report on how many people were trained by each group in each month. If I want to drill down into some detail, so I go, well, hang on, what did we train 638 people on in July? I can double click on that and I can come in here and I can see that detail. So that's, you're always able to drill down in a pivot table as well. Okay. What else might I want to know? Well, I might want to know a bit more detail about, I can see all these different people. What about me? What about my team, the training team? So one of the things I can do, for example, is I can take the group name and put it into a filter instead. And then I can take the course name and put that over here. I can take the employee ID and put the employee ID into the values. Okay, I can then come with my group name here where I've got the group name. I can come in and say, I don't want all, I want the training team. By the way, notice there is this select multiple items. So I can actually select multiples at once if I want, or this time I'm just going to go with the training team. So I can see here what we have trained over the year. So I've got my grand totals there. Let's say that I'm not interested in the date, I just want to see in total. I can just get rid of that there. What else can I do? I can come down here and I should be able to do a sort, I'm hoping. I can do a sort, largest to smallest. There we go. So I can see that CRM was the most people that we trained last year. And then if I think to myself, well, hang on, that's really interesting. That's my raw numbers. But what about if I wanted percentages? So I can go from here. I can grab the employee ID again and put it there. So I've now got count and count to, but this time I want to do something different with it. So with my count here, I can click on this little drop down and I can say value field settings. So by the way, you can see here I could do an average, I could do a max or a min, I could do a sum, I could do all these sorts of basic formulas here. I can change my number format and so on. But what I can also do is show my values as, and I could do a calculation. So I'm going to do a percentage of the grand total. I'm going to say OK. So now I can see that we did an awful lot of people on CRM and ePro and adapt for staff, and that fell away until we get down towards sort of the bottom of the numbers and we're getting something like the roadshow or graduations and so on. So that's just a few things that I can do. Oh, one of the things that might be handy with that actually is if I get rid of the group name as a filter, and instead I want to add the group name as a slicer. Okay, so let me go with group name as a slicer. So what on earth is a slicer? This is a slicer. So now I can see, again, I've got the training team selected. I can say, well, what did HR get up to? What did AWO get up to? What about PCE? And so on. Okay. So that's just a few of the ways that you can use your pivot tables. I hope you can see how easy it is and how, look, I've never ever touched my original data. My original data is here and it's safe and it's okay. And I'll hope to, oh, by the way, you'll notice my pivot table fields have disappeared. Just click inside the pivot table again and they'll reappear. But yeah, so I hope that has encouraged you to go away and have a little play with pivot tables.